from New York, Ebro in the morning on Hot 97.
Hey, it is time. More UFC talk. We're having a busy week this week. My name is Peter Rosenberg, and my guest today, Thug Rose Namajunas. How are you, Rose?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for saying my name right.
Well, I asked you. I wanted to make sure because I've heard it go a few different ways.
Yeah.
First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
Fresh off another win, April, and the word on the street is that you could potentially get the winner of Joanna Champion's title defense this weekend.
Yeah.
What do you think the likelihood? What do you think the likelihood is that you get that is what happens for you?
I'd say it's about a 50% chance, you know. There's still other contenders that are technically, Claudia and Carolina they're fighting.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be probably, I feel like, the only other option. So it's kind of like a 50-50 for me.
And what do you think? What do you think the odds are of Joanna getting the win? What is it? Jessica Andrade? That's who she has this weekend. How do you see the fight playing out this weekend?
I see Joanna probably knocking her out. I could see that happening, you know. I think that Jessica really believes in her ability to take punches and damage and just keep going forward and kind of brawling like that. So I think that's kind of a rough strategy to take against Joanna. I think she could do it, but Joanna's the best, and I think she can knock her out.
So you think Joanna's that good, huh?
I do, yeah. She's, she hasn't. She's proven herself over time, and yeah, she's just mentally, she's the best in the division right now.
So you're Lithuanian, but grew up in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And how did that happen? What's the path from Lithuania to Wisconsin?
Yeah. So all my family, pretty much like my blood relatives, live in Lithuania, and my father had the idea back in '91 was when Lithuania declared its independence from the Soviet Union, and there was a lot of stuff going on at the time, and he saw an opportunity that we could get refugee status here in America, and we took that opportunity. My mom, went with him, and my brother was born in Lithuania at the time. I was born right after we got here, and so yeah, I'm first generation, and sorry. And yeah, he just saw an opportunity to like have a better life, and there was just a lot of instability in Lithuania at the time. So yeah, we just kind of took refugee status. We had somebody taking care of us while we were here, and then some stuff happened in our family. We now we live in Colorado now, from Milwaukee, but yeah, that's how it happened.
Was there like a community of refugees in Milwaukee? Like, how did that go?
Yeah, we actually one of our childhood friends, his name is Taras. He was from Russia, and he ended up coming under the same kind of thing. And he lived right, that's how we met. We were in the same apartment buildings together, and there was like a whole little, they didn't really say like who was living in the same areas, but like we kind of like, met other people that were doing the same thing.
And how long did it take for you to get into fighting?
I started martial arts when I was 5 years old. I started with Taekwondo, and that was kind of my stepdad's idea at the time. And I was always just like kind of a rough tomboy.
So did your parents break up after you got here?
Yeah.
And then your mom remarried?
Yeah.
And stepdad, an American?
Yeah.
Okay. He introduced you to this idea.
Yeah.
Taekwondo.
And now, yeah. And
was it just to toughen you up? Was it just to find an activity? What was the logic behind it?
I'm not really sure. I think it was pretty much just to keep me out of trouble, because there's a lot of, there's just a lot of bad things to get into around where we were living. And yeah, it just kept me busy. It also helped me defend myself. It helped me give me focus and discipline and things like that. And it helped out a lot. It also, it didn't keep me out of trouble like completely, but I still enjoyed getting into neighborhood fights every once in a while, but mostly for fun. Like we were just kind of like crazy kids.
So that was the trouble you got into, was sort of scrapping with other girls or guys or whoever?
Mostly guys.
Mostly guys.
Yeah.
Why at that age as a kid did you find trouble, or did you enjoy fighting, I should say?
There was not much else to do in Milwaukee. It's like an urban jungle. It's just you either like, you ride your bike, but then your bike gets stolen. So it's kind of like, okay, I'm just going to walk around and, just we had a lot of pent up frustration, and that was the way. And then also the just watching like WWE and stuff and like video games, like it just kind of has an influence on you that and it's just fun, at the time.
You wanted to mix it up. So were you play wrestling at the time too as a kid?
Yeah, we used to like throw chairs at each other. We used to like clothesline each other and have our special moves. And,
so this is like 2000. So
yeah.
were you? What wrestlers were you into when you were a kid?
Well, The Rock, of course. I liked Stone Cold Steve Austin.
You weren't into the girls. You didn't take to Trish and Lita. They weren't your type.
No, I actually didn't really like pay attention to the like girls that much.
But Rock and Austin, the ones with attitude.
Yeah.
And when did it start getting like really serious, the fighting? When did it go from like, oh, I'm just a kid taking Taekwondo to like, okay, now that we're ramping this thing up and getting serious, you're good at this?
I mean, I always treated it very serious. Just with anything I was doing, I was a very serious little kid. Like even my mom would my kindergarten teacher would tell my mom, man, Rose, like every time like she comes to class or early, she sits in her seat, she gets all her work done before the class even starts, and then she's just like, super. I was just very serious and disciplined by nature. So that was just kind of like, I always treated everything serious. But when it became like an opportunity for me to actually make it into a career was when I actually met my fiance Pat. Because he was in the UFC at the time. And then there was other UFC fighters or just professional fighters at the gym that I was going to and training. And that kind of, opened my eyes to the opportunity or the possibility that maybe women could actually do this. And maybe I can actually make a living doing this the way that
So what level were you, when you met your fiance, what level were you at?
I was like I wasn't even really an amateur fighter at the time. I was kind of just like training in kickboxing and in more contact kind of martial arts. Obviously Taekwondo and karate, they have the sparring and stuff like that. But when I was introduced to jiu-jitsu, wrestling, and kickboxing, that's kind of where I was at. I was like kind of still in the beginning stages of, I think I might have had like one amateur fight at the time.
And do you remember when you first were taking on amateur fights, what was the feeling like for you? Was it instantly a great feeling? Was it one of a lot of fear or anxiety? What do you remember the emotions of trying it early on?
Every emotion possible. It's like a roller coaster. You get you're waiting patiently. Like there's all this anticipation, and you're talking about the fight, and it's just so much ups and downs. And then when you finally the scariest part is just walking to the cage or waiting to get there. And then once the cage door closes, it's kind of like, it's still scary, but it's just like now that's after you've kind of hit the peak of the roller coaster. Now you're going for the fall.
The drop is the walk down to the ring. Is that kind of like it?
Like probably like once the fight starts is when you start to drop. Right. You're just like, whatever. Okay, here we go now. We're going. Yeah.
And do you enjoy, like I get mixed responses from people. There are people who really enjoy the fight part, and then there are people who just that they don't consider that the part they enjoy. They consider that the work part. How do you see it?
It depends, It depends on which fight you're talking about. Because there's been times where, like, when I'm in the fight, I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, I did not prepare for this. I was not ready. I thought I was, but I was actually just lying to myself the whole time. But most of the time, if everything's going right and if you've prepared correctly and you're centered and you're humble and you're like, you're in your own skin, it's the most blissful experience ever.
Really?
Yeah.
Even getting hit, like you don't find the experience of getting hit to be really terrible?
It sucks. It sucks. But sometimes it's both like blissful and painful at the same time. It's weird. I don't know.
The end of your last fight, that ended with the rear naked.
Yeah.
And she's like bleeding simultaneously as she's tapping out.
Yeah.
And then you guys instantaneously afterwards embraced.
Yeah.
A lot of people who don't know the fight game well at all, that can look
like weird, confusing.
Yes.
Yeah,
people can see it like, oh my God, I don't understand. How are you able to separate the feelings of when you like someone and have really no issue with them whatsoever with the goal of beating their ass, more or less?
Yeah. So I can maybe try and provide an analogy that, I don't know, I've never been in war or anything like that, so I can't really say for sure, but I can imagine, I've heard stories of, people fighting in wars against each other, and then in certain moments, you kind of like certain people in a war kind of have a moment of clarity or a moment of humanity, and they see the other person that's supposed to be their enemy, but it's like they realize that they're just a victim of the circumstances. It's not anything personal. It's just like, this is what has to happen, and like there's something bigger that is making this happen. And for me, that's kind of what it's like. It's like, this is the best way that I can make a living. And this is something that I love to do at the same time. It's very conflicting, but it's nothing personal against the person. They're human just like I am. But I'm here to try and be the best. And you're here to try and be the best. But, doesn't mean that afterwards, after it's over, that it can't change, the way I feel about you as a human being. Like, I can still be a decent human being after the fact. But we all have that animal inside of us that when it comes down to food on the table, there's just certain things that, you might think that you have certain friends, but when it comes down to a survival situation, even though, this is the way that I provide my living for, me and my family, and that's the same for her. So, obviously I could do other things, I don't have to fight, so I do enjoy it. But yeah, it's hard to explain to people. It really is.
Yeah. Do you ever think about life after fighting and what else interests you?
Being sustainable living, I'm really into, ever since I was a kid, when they would ask us, what we wanted to be when we grew up, I was like, had this fantasy of being a farmer. I was telling my teacher that. And it's kind of what I want to do. I'm really interested in animals. I've always had a passionate for animals. But
you brought a dog with you today.
Yeah, she's my ESA. She keeps me calm during fights, especially. I don't bring her everywhere with me. It's mainly for when I'm doing a fight week. That's really important for me. But
just to keep, so she's your emotional support animal.
Yeah.
So, and she really does keep you calm.
Yeah. And then flying kind of gives me anxiety too. I hate it.
How does she do on the flights?
She does great. Like obviously this time I feel like she was a little bit bugged. Like she was like, "Ugh, you're leaving again." Like she just wants to be in her backyard and stuff like that. But she understands that there's a job to do. But yeah, so after fighting, I started my garden finally. I have like a nice little place to start growing food and stuff like that. So that's kind of what I'm interested in. And we just came back from Indonesia back in this past winter, where we were building these self-sustaining houses called earthships, and we stayed there for a month, and we're trying to help the pollution problem there because there's just like streets of just like plastic everywhere. So that's the type of stuff that I'm into. I mean, it just seems kind of ironic that I fight, but using violence to trying to change the world.
Yeah, no,
in a way, but
I could see how you could point out, but you could also, I could, if I wanted to, make a flip side argument about, the living that you make right now being a simplistic form of entertainment and sort of something that is very, whether people like it or not, it is natural to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And as long as you have respect for your opponents and care for people, I don't think those things necessarily are mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
Being good to the environment and fighting.
Yeah, and I do have other interests too. I was a pianist since I was little too, and I kind of strayed away from that. Like the more and more I did martial arts, but I kind of want to get back into it and practice a little bit more. So that might be some venture that I go into a little bit and dabble in. Really, I used to do a little bit of modeling as a preteen, so that's kind of something that maybe I would like to touch on. But the main, there's other interests as well.
Yeah, I think that I was going to say that modeling or acting could certainly be an interesting step for you to take too. You have a very unique look.
Thank you.
And it's interesting too because a lot of times have you had a lot of, I feel like you haven't had the same fanfare of like the, ooh, look, hot fighter.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things where like, the way that I portray myself, I think it's going to take a while for people to like. It's going to be the long term kind of thing. It's not like the quick. Like I'm not pulling that card out, like the booty pick card right out the like the gate. It's just I don't have to do that.
No, I don't think you do.
And it doesn't mean that girls that do that are whatever. That's your thing that you're doing. Whatever your character is, you do that.
Right.
And I'm just trying to be me to the fullest.
Right. You just know that you have your pretty card in your back pocket, and if you want to pull it when you need to, you can.
I know I could be sexy.
So really quickly, we learned yesterday the UFC announced that a new weight class for women, flyweight, a weight class between bantam and straw. Explain for people what you think what impact this will have on women fighting in UFC.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see. There's a lot of girls that, not just in the UFC, but outside the UFC, that are right in that middle stage where they're a little too small for 135 and they're a little too big for 115. And it's also going to be interesting to see, which girls move around a lot. I think it'll take some time to kind of figure it out. Like, how is it going to look? I think we'll need some time to see how it'll play out, but I think it's going to be good, and I think there's a new generation of women that are seeing how females can be treated in a male dominant sport, that we're pretty much equal, and there's not many other sports you can say that about. So I think that it's going to be a long-term kind of deal that I think we're going to see a lot of great things come from it.
Are you naturally just straw, like you don't see the fly being a weight that you'd be natural to?
If you were to ask me that probably 6 months ago, I'd say yeah. But at the same time, even then, I still would move up. I would fight it. I used to fight, girls before this got really big. I would fight girls that were bigger than me, and it didn't really matter to me as much. There's more to it than just weight, and size. It's definitely a factor, but now I'm kind of growing into my body a little bit more, getting a little more muscle mass. And I could definitely see myself moving up to 125 if the right opportunity presented itself. And, I feel like I have unfinished business, obviously, at 115. So I have no business, trying to move up right this second. That doesn't make any sense. But in the future, yes.
Well, listen, let's hope that Dana is a man of his word, and that as we see it, probably Joanna wins this weekend, or whoever, even if Jessica wins, that we get to see you get your opportunity. And lastly, the nickname Thug, where did that come from?
That was definitely from my childhood. We had some, her name was Erica Gibbs. She's a Jamaican kind of, we had a big Jamaican family living right next to us. And she would always tell all her family, oh, that's Thug Girl's over there. Cause I was just this little innocent looking, blonde little girl. I don't know. But I had a really bad attitude. I was a tomboy that, I would always wear bandanas and stuff and think that I was really hard. So
thus came the nickname Thug Rose, which is such a gangster nickname.
Yeah.
Thug Rose Namajunas, thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you.
And good luck. Where's your dog? Where's Niska?
She's laying down right there.
Shout out to Niska the pooch.